density is the mass of something per volume. So it's the way that I like to explain it is how much stuff you have in a certain amount of space. Okay, so the mass of something is simply the amount of matter that is contained within that object. So, for example, if you have a pencil in your hand, there's a certain amount of mass or matter that makes up that pencil. Okay, so the mass of something is just how much matter there is. Interestingly, mass will remain constant, but weight will change. So that pencil that you have in your hand right now, that mass will stay the same if you take that pencil from Earth to the moon, but the weight will change. So the weight is just simply like a factor or a measure of the pull of gravity onto an object. And if you go to the moon, the pull of gravity is less because the moon is less massive. So gravity is less. But the mass or amount of matter that is contained in that pencil will be constant, no matter if you're on Earth or on the moon. So density is the amount of mass per volume of something, or how much stuff you have in a specific amount of space. And volume or space is like the amount of area that you're looking at. Okay, so there's different ways that you can change density. You can actually change density and increase density in a couple of ways. You can increase density if you increase the mass of something, but you keep the volume constant. So you keep the same amount of space, but you put more stuff into it, into the same amount of space. So if you have like a beaker, so if you know what a beaker is, it's like a glass container. So if you have a glass container and you put a bunch of rocks into that glass container, if you would have a certain amount of stuff in a certain amount of space, and that glass container would have a certain density. You can increase the density of that glass container if you put more rocks into it, but keep the glass container the same size. So you can increase density by increasing mass. You can also increase density if you reduce the volume. So if you start with your original glass container, and let's say you have 15 rocks in there to start with, if you take those 15 rocks and you put it into a smaller glass container, meaning you reduce the volume, you will have increased the density of that object. Okay. You can decrease density in a couple of ways. You can decrease density by decreasing the mass but keeping the volume constant. So if you look at these pictures down here at the bottom, okay, the middle one, let's say the first one is the one that we're going to start with. So you have a certain amount of stuff, like that green bar that's at the bottom of that box. That's going to be our starting density. So there's a certain amount of stuff in this space. You can decrease the density if you decrease the mass. So you take some stuff out. So the second picture, so the middle picture, represents decreasing density by taking mass out. So you took some of that green stuff out. And so same amount of space, but less stuff means that you have less density. You can also decrease density if you increase the volume. So again, starting with the original amount of green stuff, if you increase the amount of space that is in, you will decrease the density. So that's the picture all the way on the right. The amount of green stuff is the same, but it's in a bigger box. It's in more space, so the density has decreased. So you can decrease density by decreasing mass or increasing volume, or you can increase density by increasing mass or decreasing volume. All those different things will change the density of an object, and that's going to come into play as we talk about water and the density of water and how it can change.